G'day, I'm Paul. Let's chat about the Nissan Pathfinder. So the previous generation was all about off-roading. You could virtually drive anywhere with it. It was built for towing. It was the off-road truck. The new one though, this one behind me here, has gone a little bit overweight, slightly cuddly, a bit like me. But unlike me, I reckon this actually looks really cool. This is the special edition Pathfinder N-Trek, which means it gets black highlights and it looks kind of rugged and cool on the road. If you have to have a 7-seat SUV. Pricing kicks off from just over 60,000 bucks in Australia, and it sits one down from the top of the range. There is actually another one above it that is about $7,000 more. You can see the rest of the range pricing in the comments below. Now, if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, if there's anything in particular that you're interested in, there are some time codes up there on the screen, or alternatively, scroll down and you will see the rest of our time codes in the description. You can click on those as well to jump ahead as you like. Please don't forget to subscribe, especially if you like our videos. Also press the bell icon because that's going to tell you every single time I'm behind the wheel of a new car. Okay, let's talk styling. The reason I think this looks so good is because of all the black highlights. And starting here with the black highlights, we have the grille. I like this kind of reflective design on the grille because it gives you a differentiator between the sort of blacked out section that doesn't reflect. So it stands out against that color. And then right down the bottom is this silver garnish that really sets this front end apart from the rest of the Pathfinder range. It can look a little bit boring, but they've kind of jazzed it up with all this gear. So that is a really cool design. Headlights, full LED headlights. So you're getting a really good projection ahead of you. LED daytime running lights in there as well. 18-inch alloy wheels, but the curious thing here is that they've increased the width of these wheels. So they're now 255 millimeters wide, the tires. They've grown by 20 millimeters, so that's going to give you better road holding. And then if you do decide to do very light off-roading, because this isn't really an off-road beast, 180 millimeters of ground clearance, this is going to get you a little bit further. Some black highlights there on the wheel arches. You've got black wing mirrors, and again, you can see here the camera there. There's actually one more camera, sorry, I got down the front here. So this all works for the 360-degree camera system. They're ultra wide angle cameras and they all mesh together to give you that sort of top-down look. Black roof rails as well. You get the black garnish highlights on the doors, black door handles. You can see the theme here. Then around the back, you've also got more black highlights and then black badges as well. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention as well is privacy glass. Privacy glass is effectively the term they use for factory tinted glass. And you can see there from the second row backwards, there is a tint. It allows between 15 and 26% of light through it, but it's not actually a tint. They dye the glass, so when it gets fitted to the car, there's no film or anything you need to worry about. And the other curious thing as well is a lot of people think you have to get an aftermarket tint to block UVA rays. That's not true. The front glass, for example, on most cars blocks 100% of UVA rays, so the damaging and harmful rays. The rest of the windows will only allow up to around 10% through, and that's before you actually put an aftermarket tint on. So keep that in mind next time you're at the showroom and they try and sell you an aftermarket tint for your car. Wow, okay, so while the exterior looks pretty good, this interior is like stepping back in time. You remember back in the 90s when it used to be trendy to have more buttons? Honda was good at it. The more buttons you had, the more premium the car was. Well, if that was true today, this would be the most premium car on the market because there are buttons absolutely everywhere. It's a pretty bland looking interior as well. It just really doesn't look modern or doesn't look anywhere near as good as a lot of the competitors in this segment. But let's call out a couple of good things. I do like the fact that there's like a 3D display ahead of the driver there. There's like a tilted back LCD screen. But outside of that, it does look pretty average. Now, in terms of build quality and just the firmness and feel around the cabin, we have our hardness tester here. So it goes from 0 being soft to 100 being hard. And this is to test how soft some of the soft touch materials are. And that dashboard is going to be my first victim. Let's give that a shot. Oh wow, that is pretty much maxing it out. Look at that, it goes up to about 98 there. That is incredibly hard, that stuff there. But this center armrest feels soft. If I put that down, 29. So they're like polar opposites. The dashboard is super hard, but the center console is super soft. Outside of the firmness of the dashboard though, all of your contact points are nice and soft, so it gives you that feeling of comfort and a little bit of luxury there as well. In terms of build quality, everything appears pretty good. It all feels nice and solid, and it looks like it'll stand the test of time when you throw a whole bunch of kids at it. So a bit like the styling and the litany of buttons, unfortunately the infotainment system in the Nissan Pathfinder isn't great. In fact, it's far from great. It's actually quite bad. Probably one of the worst infotainment systems in a modern car today. It's quite tricky to use and it just doesn't have logical menus through it. But I'll walk you through it today and give you a detailed review of it, plus all of the features that it does come with, just so you can get a feel for what is actually built into there. So 8-inch screen, it's also a touch screen, or you can drive it using this central controller here. That's a volume knob or a zoom knob, depending on the context, plus a directional controller with an enter button in the center. First button here is camera. This brings up the 360-degree camera. This camera is pretty bad. Right now, there is perfect light outside and you can't tell any detail here at all. When it gets to nighttime, you just can't see anything, and it kind of defeats the purpose of actually having a camera. I say this all the time. I don't understand why manufacturers can't just buy high definition camera and put it in the car so you have a quality camera on display here. But anyway, there's a separate menu for climate. There is climate controls down the bottom, but this displays the temperature, allows you to select rear climate and then further customize things if you don't want to use the controls down the bottom. Then we have the audio menu. In here you have a selection of AM, FM, you can play a CD, Bluetooth audio streaming, USB, iPod and auxiliary as well. Unfortunately though, you won't find any Apple CarPlay or any Android Auto here, which is incredibly disappointing for this segment. The apps menu is interesting. They have something called an app garage, and in there you can download apps to install to the car. As you can see, it's not the quickest system in the world. It takes a little while to load. You have about 1 gigabyte of data space available to install your apps, but none of the apps are really that useful, and by the time you get them installed, open them, they're kind of redundant. So it is a handy feature to have, and I'm sure it was modern a few years ago, but times have moved on and stuff like this is kind of redundant now. Another bugbear here is navigation. It seems that all of the functions that you need to access regularly, they're all just nested in menus and require a long time to actually achieve what you're trying to do. So for example, if we want to go here to a street, I'm going to put in the town first. We'll type in Melbourne, select Melbourne, then we're going to put a street in, then a number, and then finally you're presented with the option to select it. The problem here is in most other cars, you simply hit the voice recognition button and then just word out exactly where you want to go. This does nothing on the nav front. So if I press that, it gives me options for the phone or for doing other sort of minor things, but there's no option to actually read out a nav address. So that is incredibly frustrating, and it means that if you do need to do anything while you're driving, you have to pull over because it's the only real safe way to do it. The map display isn't actually too bad, and it's quite quick and responsive, so zooming in and out all happens fairly easily. It's just a basic map display there. It comes with traffic overlays, so it will tell you where you've got traffic hotspots and it will guide you around them if required. The status menu is simply what's going on with climate and radio. Info, this is where you'll find things like fuel economy and your economy driving report. So it tells you how you've been doing. You can reset that and log it for future drives. And then you've got other things like your traffic information and then map information as well, because it is all loaded into the car. There's no CarPlay or third-party services, so everything has to be loaded into the car. Finally, you have settings. So this is where you can configure all the functions of the car. Again, there's nothing too fancy in here. Very basic adjustments for clock and other nav functions as well. Enough about infotainment. Let's talk about the features you're getting for your $60,000. The good news here is this car comes with a stack of standard equipment, so it's going to keep you and the kids very, very busy. Now, the first one I'm going to point out is the sunroof. That looks very cool and all, but with a push of the button here, we have a back roof as well. That is going to have the kids happy looking out there. It's always a great thing to have when you have little tackers there in the second and third row, driving through a rainforest or something. It's a really cool thing to look out the roof and see all the trees and stuff like that. Anyway, never had that as a child. Anyway, so heated seats, both for the driver and passenger. They're just these simple switches, fairly standard Nissan affair. It's always kind of looked like that. Tri-zone climate control, one for the passenger, one for the driver, and then one for the second and third rows, because there's air vents in the third row as well. Radar cruise control, low and high speed autonomous emergency braking, but it's not a camera system. It's all done using radar, which is the section at the front of the car that I showed you before. 13 speaker Bose sound system, some very comfy electrically adjustable chairs. And in addition to the 360-degree camera, you have rear parking sensors only. You don't get front parking sensors, which is a really strange omission. Normally when they level up to a 360 camera, you're getting rear and front parking sensors, but they've decided to leave it out here for some reason. No offense to Americans, but you can see this car is very American, and it is built and tailored for the American market because there is storage everywhere. So there's 10 cup holders in total, including 2 up the front here that fit all sorts of cups, including those massive American cups. You have storage down here for your telephone, 2 12-volt outlets just there alone. In the center console here, it's a 2-stage system. So the top stores your coins and keys and other bits and pieces. That's carpeted as well. Then a lower section. This is nice and deep. In here you have 2 USB outlets, the auxiliary in, the SD card slot for the maps. But to give you an idea of how old the technology is in this car, there is an RCA plug down there. I haven't seen one of those for God knows how long. That is to feed video into that infotainment system. Now, if you thought that was all impressive in terms of storage, have a look at this. This is literally the never-ending glove box. I can't even see where that finishes. I can lose half a hand in there. That is unbelievably cool, and I don't understand why other SUVs can't cram that much space into their glove boxes. On top of that, you have storage in the doors for a bottle and maybe something else small, which is a little strange that you can't fit anything more in there. Now, comfort. This is where the Pathfinder kicks all of its goals. This chair is so relaxing. It's like someone's coming up behind me and hugging me. It is really good. The steering wheel itself, it looks a little bit plain, but it sits nicely in the hands and it feels good behind the wheel. And you've got to remember that this car is just over 5 meters long. This is longer than a Toyota Land Cruiser. So if you're going to be sitting here, you want to be in charge of the car and have full visibility across the road. The second row is where the kids are going to be spending most of their time, and it comes with what they call stadium seating. So if you think about that logically, in a stadium, the seats go up one by one. This is the same sort of story. As you get to the second row, you have better visibility across the front of the cabin, and it kind of makes the kids feel a bit more empowered about sitting in the back seat. So kids, it's going to be fine for room. In fact, with this seat in my standard driving position, I have stacks of knee room, but curiously, I have literally no toe room at all. I kind of have to wedge my feet under there, and it's quite an uncomfortable position to be in. So that is a little bit disappointing. In the back of the seats, you have mat pockets in both of them. As I mentioned before, there's a third zone of climate control. So just using these controls here, you can activate that third zone, increase and decrease the temperature, and also adjust fan speed. There's USB connectivity here, but I love the fact that they've included USB-C. That is the latest USB format, and it charges things like new laptops, and a lot of new devices will move towards USB-C over time. So it is a little bit ironic that they have USB-C there, but have such a dated infotainment system. Anyway, center armrest here as well. 2 cup holders and a little coin tray there. I love the fact with these cup holders that they have rubber lips on them. So when you get your cup and you put it inside, it's not really going to move around much. If you're not satisfied with that position, or if you've got a brother or sister that's crammed in next to you, you've got a cup holder in the actual door, and then on top of that you have a cup holder in the door pocket as well. So there are cup holders absolutely everywhere here, and because this is a 3-row car, these seats move backwards and forwards too, so you can accommodate a little bit more room for your 3rd row passengers. Before you close and exit this review, I want to explain why the Pathfinder is about to redeem itself. I know the tech and all that styling stuff isn't amazing, but if you need a 7-seat family SUV that has stacks of room, this is the one, and I'll show you why it has some smarts built into it. So if you are loading a whole stack of cargo in the back, there is a cargo mode. You pull this lever down, the road drops, and you get a virtually flat floor. But if you do want to climb into the back there is a really clever system. So using this lever, we push that up. It pulls the seat forward, but check that out. It then allows you to slide the row virtually completely out of the way, so even an adult can walk in. And then for the little kids, there's a grab handle here as well. So as they're climbing into the back row there, they've got something to hold on to. Now, you're going to see my bum in a second, so I'm going to quickly clamber in. Okay, so first thing I notice here is that this is a really comfortable place to be seated. Let me try pulling this back, and we'll see how we go for leg room. Wow, that's actually really impressive. I have stacks of toe room here. You can see that this row's obviously moved forward a little bit, but for an adult, You can actually fit in here very easily. You've got heaps of cup holders. You have your own air vents as well. So this is a pretty impressive place to be, even for an adult. You'll be pleased to hear that yes, the third row is good for adults and kids, but the cargo space is also pretty useful. Now, before I show you that, rubber button here to open the boot, and then there's a second button there, and that allows you to lock the car from the outside. So you don't need to go around to the proximity sensing button on the door. You can just push it from here when you're done. So here you have just over 450 litres of cargo space. It expands to a little over 2,200 litres when the third row and the second row is folded as well. But how useful is this space? Let's see if we can fit our bag into there. We can. I'm just curious to see if that'll close. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. So that fits a large size suitcase, but it does expand further. Before I show you it expanding further, have a look under the floor here. You have what appears to be the world's biggest subwoofer buried in there, which is pretty awesome. And then you have what looks like a tyre burnout kit, but this is actually a mobility kit. There is a space saver spare tyre under the car, but this allows you to repair the tyre without having to change it, which is pretty handy to have. How do these seats fold out of the way? Well, it is a straightforward process. You pull this, the head drops down, and then you push them down. And then same story over here. Now, the one thing you'll notice here is that there isn't a cargo blind, and I'm keen to hear from you guys that are watching in the comments below. Is a cargo blind absolutely necessary? I mean, I picture myself putting things in here, but you can clearly see what's in there. So how important is a cargo blind to your cargo space? Off to the side as well, we have 12-volt outlet, a hook on the side for bags, and then finally a hook on the floor as well to secure items. Let's pop our bags in here to see how they fit. It's a piece of cake, and then this one comes in just next to it. Look at that, that is a mammoth space. This is going to be really handy for families. Okay, driving in the Pathfinder, there is immediately an issue. I can't turn left. My arm won't let me turn left. It gets wedged between this center console and the wheel, and I have to kind of lift it out of the way. You may remember we had this exact same issue when we tested the Mazda CX-9. You can see that review just up there if you want to watch it. But Japanese cars, for some reason, it just seems to be an issue where I can't actually turn left, which is a little bit frustrating. But this is an electrically assisted steering rack in terms of the movement, so I can shift it out of the way, but even then it's still a little bit compromised. Powering the big old Pathfinder is a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol V6 engine. It makes 202 kilowatts of power and 340 newton meters of torque. It channels all that torque through a CVT, which is a continuously variable transmission. That means when you step on the throttle, it makes all sorts of weird noises. So put that to one side. The CVT actually works really well with the engine because you stand on it, it makes a little bit of noise, but it gets up and moves, and it's kind of, it's linear and uniform. It never feels like it's hunting back through gears, and it's always just there when you need it. And that kind of stuff's handy when you're towing. This car will tow up to 2,700 kilograms with a braked trailer. Given this Pathfinder is the all-wheel drive version, it comes with a little dial down here. So you can just leave it as a two-wheel drive, so that sends torque exclusively to the front wheels, or you pop it onto auto. In auto, it presents you with a screen in front that says, okay, I'm sending currently 100% of torque to the front axle. Get on the throttle, and it starts varying the amount of torque, and it starts shuffling some to the rear. We found that on gravel, it's actually actively sending more torque to the rear to make sure you have maximum traction. And if you are doing a bit of light off-roading, you can lock it into four-wheel drive, so it sends 50% of torque to each axle, and there's also a hill descent control as well. But wouldn't recommend doing a great deal of four-wheel driving given that this only has 180 millimeters of ground clearance. Okay, what about the ride and the comfort? Oh, this is so good. I keep harping on about this seat. The seat is fantastic. It is so nice to sit in. The suspension is really soft. You can see why this car works in the States where you've got undulations and constant choppiness on the roads. It is such a perfectly balanced car for Australian roads. What about throttle response? So we're going up a hill here. I'm going to give it a little jab. Yeah, you do have to wait a little bit there for that gearbox to come to life, but you do feel the full brunt of that engine very quickly thereafter. So yes, it is a little bit laggy with the CVT, but for most parts, it's actually not too bad. There is a sport mode you can activate. There's a little button here on the gear shift. Hit that, and it kind of gives you quicker, sharper responses. It's not going to pin you back in the seat all that much, but it makes it a little bit raspier off the line there. Outside of the engine noise, this is actually a really quiet place to be seated. Even with the wider tyres, it still doesn't chatter too much into the cabin. Even on coarse chip roads, it's nice and quiet, and it kind of adds to that serene, relaxing atmosphere inside the cabin. Let's talk visibility. So this is a big car. There is no mistaking that. It is slightly bigger than a Land Cruiser, we know that, and that means that you have to be aware of your surroundings. So I can see clearly out the front. Out the back is a little bit compromised because the headrests kind of block vision, and if you have a third passenger there in the center or kids in the third row, it's going to make it really hard to see out of. But it is graced with massive wing mirrors and also blind spot monitors on the doors to help keep you aware of what's happening around you. In and around the city, when you find yourself coming to speed humps like this one here, the suspension comfort is really good. It's so softly sprung that you really could drive over anything and you're never going to feel it. Official fuel consumption is 10.1 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle. Unfortunately, you're going to be getting a whole lot more than that. This is a heavy car. It's a little over 2 tonnes, and that's a petrol V6. So it chews through a fair bit of fuel, especially if you load it up with passengers, and even more so if you're doing some towing. Expect a more realistic figure of around 11, 12, or even 13 litres per 100 kilometres if you're doing a lot of driving around the city. Okay, Nissan Pathfinder. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't have kids. I don't need one of these, but I kind of want one. It's really comfortable to drive. The chair, the seat, well, I say chair, it's more of a chair because it feels like it just hugs you in. It feels like you can just sit there and watch a couple of hours worth of television. It is a really comfy car. So the problem isn't with the Nissan Pathfinder, it's more an issue with all of its competitors. There is heaps of room in this. It is nice to drive. It has a punchy engine, but the problem is that for not much more money, you can get the Mazda CX-9. The Mazda CX-9 is around the same size, has a better laid out interior, it has far better technology, and arguably I think the engine is a little better than this as well. So it is a real shame. There is a new Nissan Pathfinder coming, so if you can get this for a good deal, especially as it becomes a run-out car, it really does service everything that your family needs. Yes, it is missing a little bit of tech, but it makes up for it in charm and also interior space. I think it is a really good family car. Before we wrap this up, I've got a question for you guys watching. So I know that a lot of people have mentioned to me previously that these have had reliability issues in the past, especially with the continuously variable transmission. I'm keen to know, have you bought one of these? How's it been in terms of reliability? Let us know in the comments below. And if you did have reliability issues, what were the dramas that you had with your car? We're very keen to get your feedback. But if you have enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could hit the like button, followed by subscribe, and then also the bell icon so you can get notified every single time we drive a new car. Also, you can head to carexpert.com.au to see the full review of this car, plus a stack of other really cool content. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.